Let's sit nice and tall and close the eyes. And just take a few moments to connect with the breath. As you breathe in, know that there is goodness entering into this physical embodiment, nourishing it, providing the nutrients that are needed, the prana. As you breathe out, feel that there's a deep integration, a relief, knowing that you have been experiencing the abundance that occurs naturally in this universe, the abundance that sustains life and happiness and peace. And you've been empowered to share that with others. See the breath as a chain. You breathe in and receive. You breathe out and share. You breathe in, you've been given a gift. You breathe out, you pass that gift along. Let the breath be the connection. And drawing the hands together in front of the heart. We'll lift our voices in celebration of that connection. In one Om and then the invocatory mantras. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om Ganana Antva Ganapati Gom Hava Mahe Kavin Kavinam Upama Shravastamam Jesta Rajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anasrinvanuti Bisidha Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhir Vajinivati Dhinama Vitriyavatu Ano Divo Brahataf Parvata Da Saraswati Yajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Gritachi Shagman Novacha Mushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha. And gently releasing the hands down and fluttering the eyes open. And so I thought today we'd go back to the beginning. Oh, goodness. I think in the world in general, no matter what area you're in, the tendency is to want to jump forward, to want to be the specialist, to want to be the expert, to want to be the scholar. And oftentimes, in having that type of a mindset, we forget that there are some very important first steps that must be taken. I don't know about you, but I would not want someone operating on my brain or my body if they didn't take those very first important steps of actually learning how to, of embodying that wisdom themselves. And so we're very fortunate that in the yoga tradition and in Advaita Vedanta and the Shakta schools, many of them, that there are yamas and niyamas for us to abide in. 5 yamas, 5 niyamas, 5 internal observances, 5 external observances. And the very first one is ahimsa. Ahimsa is a Sanskrit word that translates as nonviolence. And in nearly every text on yoga that you read that is a traditional text, a scripture, ahimsa is listed first in the ethics. There needs to be an impulse a calling to minimize one's own violence. It's not to say that we look out in the world and say, well, violence is rampant anywhere, so can't do that one. It has nothing to do with the outside world. It has only to do with the inside world. The world that you create within yourself based on your own thoughts and impressions, based on your own interactions, both with yourself and with all others. So ahimsa is the first vow. It's the first investigation. It's the first exploration. And when we talk about ahimsa, it's important for students to understand that traditionally, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, and even today, there's kind of different levels. There's the householder. There's the one who is knowingly on the path moving toward renunciation. And then there is the one who's renouncing. So there's 3 levels of application at a minimum. There's probably 1,000. But there's at least 3 basic levels of application that we can talk about. I think a chronic misunderstanding is that we look at the word ahimsa in the spiritual community in America, and we say, I got to do that perfect. I got to be that perfect. I have to express that perfect. But we haven't sat down with ourselves to do the preliminary investigation to figure out what that even means. Like, what has to happen in your life in order for ahimsa to be a central concept, to be something that you abide in. Instead, maybe we buy a t-shirt that says kindness. Treat everyone with kindness, Maybe we try to treat others with kindness. We go out and we work in a food kitchen, or we get involved in some type of a donation fund. And then somebody else there is mean, because they haven't heard the word ahimsa, or, not interested in it, or caught up in their own life drama. And then we walk away kind of pouting, saying, well, I tried to be nonviolent, but that person wouldn't let me. It has nothing to do with that person. It has only to do with the internal world that you create for yourself. So the first thing when we're investigating ahimsa, nonviolence, is to sit down with ourselves and have a very honest conversation. And to say, as a householder, which you are all householders, as a householder who is looking to understand this path of life more profoundly, where is it that my own behavior is troublesome? Where is it that my own behavior and my thoughts are violent on any level at all? Now, we're all overachievers, so we'll go to the big one. We'll be like, well, the most difficult part of my life where I tend to be violent, and we'll say, I'm going to fix that. Don't do that. It's guaranteed frustration, and it's near guarantee that you'll walk away feeling like a failure, that you can't do it. Because we have to build up the resiliency first. We need to prove to ourselves that we can take little steps. We have to prove to ourselves that we're strong enough to be committed. We need to prove to ourselves that we can stick to our word, that our word can be pure and meaningful. But if we try to hike, Mount Everest without ever taking a walk around the block, Mount Everest is not going to happen. So what's the little thing in your life where there's violence? What's the little thing in your life where you tend toward harm? Do you commit yourself to critical judgment of yourself? Do you snap easily? Do you Eat your food as if the food doesn't matter? When you're driving in your car and someone drives past you, do you give them the finger? Or curse at them a little? Or just kind of, wish them not well? Call yourself on these little violences. And as you call yourself compassionately, but straightforwardly, on these little violences, then intend to change them. The person that passes you by on the highway, instead of the unkindness, say, may you arrive safely. Instead of snapping, take a breath and acknowledge, I'm about to snap in my reaction. That could be harmful. Is there an alternative? And then just continue the investigation from there. Understand that if you try to climb Mount Everest with no conditioning, it's not going to happen. So start with the little things. Build the resiliency. Tone your attitude. Tone the muscles of your life experience, of your senses. So that more and more, what becomes revealed to you is the goodness that actually does exist. And that if you tune yourself into that goodness, then the world is automatically a different level of irritating and violent. And what I mean by that is not that the exterior violence goes away, but in toning yourself, tuning in with the inner goodness that you have the capacity to express, then you are no longer walking through the world as a contributor to the irritating violence that exists there. So you're one less factor in someone else's pain. You're one less factor in the pain of the outside world. And you're one more factor in the healing that can occur in the world. Because people will look at you like a moth to a flame. They're like, why is that person so peaceful in the midst of all this chaos and craziness? How do I get like that? And you may inspire, even if you don't know it ever. You'll inspire other people to begin their inquiry, their investigation. If you ask people across the board, one of the main things they'll say that they want in this life is to matter. They want to matter. They want to leave a legacy. They want to do something meaningful in the world. No matter who that person is. That's going to be a universal answer. The greatest way that we can matter is to empower peace. And that starts right here with the internal world. So ahimsa is all about that. It's about minimizing the violent behavior and eventually renouncing it completely. But we have to start where we are in our path in this life, and the path of most people is the path of the householder. As you work through your investigation of your own violent tendencies, then you begin the path of renunciation. See, people think renunciation, I got to go start wearing orange robes and whatnot. No, that's not it at all. Who cares? I mean, like yesterday, I had on black pants and a t-shirt because I was painting. I walked outside and Alex said, I almost didn't recognize you. The renunciation doesn't have much at all to do with the color, right, that you're wearing. It has to do with the mindset. It says, I'm not going to contribute to the violence any longer in this regard. I'm working on the rest, But in this regard, I'm going to wish people well, may you arrive safely, instead of cursing them as they pass me on the highway. I'm going to hold the door open for the elderly person rather than rushing around and pushing past them, making them feel insignificant and alone. I'm going to be kind to the teller at the store rather than complaining about the prices and about how slow she's moving. I'm going to renounce these violent behaviors a little bit at a time. And then the more that we do that, the more we see the benefit of it, the more we want to do it. And eventually, you get to Mount Everest. Eventually. But we can't start there. So ahimsa. Ask yourself, where are the little irritating violences that I commit myself on a day-to-day basis, both to myself and to others? And then choose a few to change. Non-stealing. In taking a vow of ahimsa, we begin the journey of non-stealing. Because when we commit violence, we steal. We rob ourselves of inner peace, and we steal peace from others. We steal from ourselves our own happiness, and we steal from others their happiness. When we commit violence, we steal. So by taking the vow of ahimsa, we now also awaken the practice of non-stealing, asteya. And we say, I'm not going to steal your contentment. I'm not going to take from you the happiness that you have worked so hard for. I'm not going to steal from you the peace that you feel in any moment whatsoever. No matter what's going on with me, I will leave you alone. Not harming you. Just loving you. And if I'm not capable of loving you, then I will at least send intentions of peace to you. So when we hear about asteya, non-stealing, automatically we think, well, don't take what doesn't belong to you. Don't take a car, don't take cash, don't steal food, don't whatever. Don't steal material things. And that's certainly part of it. That's like that first kind of level is don't take what doesn't belong to you. Other people's peace doesn't belong to you either. Other people's contentment doesn't belong to you. It's not yours to manipulate and do with what you will. It's theirs. So if what we really want to see in this world is a greater sense of harmony, inclusiveness, peace, then we have to actually be committed to that ourselves. And awaken within us the wanting for all others to have peace also, to be happy also. There isn't a single person in this world who doesn't deserve peace. But we say that, don't we? We're like, well, they don't deserve peace. I mean, like, we're all one, yeah, but, not that one. You have to drop those words. Those words are thievery. Those words are stealing. Because just as you've had your dark night of the soul, so has everybody else. Just as you have had, borrowing a word that I just heard a little while ago, your phantoms, so does everybody else. So if you don't think that another being, human or not, is eligible for peace, then what you're actually saying is, I myself am not eligible for peace. And if I can't have it, then you won't have it. And I will become violent in order to prove that point. So we have to change it up. We have to change it up and acknowledge all beings everywhere have a right to a peaceful inner self. I will take the vow of nonviolence and start working a little bit at a time. And as a result of that, I will also take the vow of asteya. I won't steal your peace. I won't take from you that which is innately our human right, the right to be peaceful and free from suffering, unnecessary suffering. We're going to have necessary suffering. And then we come to truthfulness, satya. And truthfulness is powerful. It's like, don't tell a lie. Okay, yep. But there's levels to everything. Actually, let me say one more thing about asteya. So we kind of have this introductory level, this entry level, this initial encounter with non-stealing, where we're understanding about not taking. But the ultimate of asteya is actually generosity. It's not keeping anything. It's giving everything, because there's such a deep faith that has been cultivated in the power of abundance that we don't need to keep things, store things away for a rainy day. We don't need to do that, because we understand that there's people hungry in the world, so we go feed them. There's people who don't have shelter, so we go build them a house. There's people who don't have medical, so we find a way to support everyone so that everyone has what they need. We commit to generosity. Instead of taking out of fear and lack, we give out of abundance. Truthfulness. So satya. Satya is, of course, don't lie. That includes little white lies. But when we have taken the vow of ahimsa and we have awakened the spirit of non-stealing and generosity, then there's a little slippery slope there. It's called the ego. And the ego likes to make things conditional, likes to have justification. So it says, well, I've been doing all this really good work, and, I've had awakening moments, and I'm doing this and that, but I don't know, now let's take a look at what those other people are doing and what they're not doing and what they deserve and what they don't deserve. And why should I continue to give to somebody who doesn't appreciate me? Or I don't mean me. I mean the fact that something is being given. The first statement was true. The second is a lie, right? Yeah. So we start to out of our own unresolved insecurity, we start to judge the acceptability of other people and the deservability of other people. And so we need to be really honest with ourselves that there is a slippery slope every step of the way, no matter what yama or niyama we're talking about, that the ego is tricky when it's not healthy, that it is a manipulator. It will try to manipulate you, and it will try to manipulate everyone else around you. And so truthfulness is accepting that and then keeping the mind focused on something other than self-gratification. So yes, service feels very good. There's definitely, a boost in the happy hormones when we give. This is scientifically proven. That's the slippery slope, though. It's okay to feel good about giving. It absolutely is. But if we only give for ourselves to feel good, then we'll slide down that slope. So we have to find another reason. And that's when we come into the truth of divinity. That everything that we do in this life is an offering. It's all an offering. If I'm humble, it's an offering. If I'm happy, it's an offering. If I'm generous, it's an offering. If I'm angry, it's an offering. I don't keep anything for myself. It's all an offering, and it's an offering to divinity. And in that way, there's more non-attachment and less obsessiveness. There's more ability to let go and less tendency to lie, to feel the necessity of lying, of justifying. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then the ultimate truthfulness, of course, is recognizing the inherent oneness that there is. And I sometimes get a little amused, I suppose is the good word, because spiritual teachers talk so differently about this. Some people are all about duality, like God is over here and you're over here and you're never going to know God because you're a human being, and you can sit close to God, but you'll never have the intimate connection because you're a sinner or whatever it is you want to call yourself in whatever other tradition. And then you have people who are the other extreme, and they say, no, you are God. You are God, so walk through the world like you're God and be that God. That's a slippery slope, by the way. There's one consciousness, period. That consciousness infuses everything that manifests and doesn't. Everything is of the same consciousness material. It's all the same. But you're a unique manifestation of that consciousness, a unique manifestation, but it is still the same consciousness. Therein lies the unity. The painting wouldn't be on the wall without the painter. The pottery isn't made without the one who throws it. So the pottery and the paint is innately part of that which created it. We don't need to explore that any further than that. We are of that creator because we are the continual flow of that consciousness. So the ultimate truth is unity. The ultimate truth is oneness. And when we take the vow of truthfulness, we allow ourselves to investigate and slowly move away from the concepts that separate us, that say, hey, I'm over here and you're over there, and therefore, my life should be peachy, but yours can't, because that's a threat to me. Instead, we say, it doesn't matter where I am or where you are, may we all be happy. May we all be free of unnecessary suffering. May we all be free of ignorance. May my words, my thoughts, and my actions have something to do with that, rather than influencing the violence that keeps us in a dark state of existence. Then we have economy of energy, abstinence. We have brahmacharya. And brahmacharya, again, this has to be looked at from different levels, because the householder is not meant to practice abstinence. The householder is meant to run a household. And if it's part of their karma, they'll have children, raise families. You can't be abstinent and raise a family. Where did family come from? So it has to mean something different to the householder. What it means to the householder is to be economical with one's own energy. Don't waste your energy. Don't go having, several dozen sexual partners. Don't run from relationship to relationship. Don't give everything you have out of ignorance and simply seeking self-pleasure. Don't be wasteful with the gifts that you've been given. Instead, be grounded. Be a bit choosy. Not in a selfish way, but in a self-preserving way. There are emotional vampires everywhere. Don't bare your neck to them. Don't give them your jugular vein. It's not that they're bad people. They're not, because we've all been in an emotional vampire at one point or another. It's that they're in a very lost moment right now, and you offering them more blood is not going to serve a purpose. It's going to keep them stuck in the cycle that they're in. What inspires change is strength. What inspires change is courage and bravery. What inspires change is resiliency. But you cannot be those things genuinely and authentically if you are not conserving your own energy. So conserve your energy. When it comes to interactions in this manifest world, conserve, don't waste. But also, bringing it to another level, give generously. Not because you're offering an emotional vampire your jugular vein, but because you're serving God. Period. This is for God. It's kind of interesting, there's this thing in the West, they really don't do yoga justice sometimes when they do things like yoga and beer, yoga and pot, yoga and booze, yoga and prime rib. Yeah.
Oh, that one's okay.
There's a place in California. And I've had conversations with a few people who have run programs like this, and just having kind of, an open conversation and trying to understand where they're coming from. And I've heard this more than one time, a few times. Well, if you look at the sadhus in India, they smoke, and they drink the soma. And I have to look at them and just try to hold my composure when I say, they're doing that for the connection only, not the pleasure. You're doing it for the pleasure, not the connection. Well, you don't know that. Well, yeah, I do, because you're charging $179 per person. And you're promising everybody awakening if they come and do this. You're marketing it in such a way that it's saying, come and enter into this altered state of mind, and enjoy some prime rib and do some yoga postures and know God. And it's like, no God, no. If you want to give them these things, then just give them these things. Like, don't put goats on people. Yeah, my soapbox. Yeah. Go play with the goats. I love goats. They're so cute. My daughter lives next to some woman who has a goat farm. And they just had a bunch of babies, so they sent me a bunch of pictures. Go play with the goats. It's wonderful. But don't let them climb on your back when you're in downward facing dog. It states also right in the scriptures, it states in there, your practice space should be clean and clear and free of distractions. And if anybody tells me that a baby goat is not a distraction, I'm just going to have to laugh, because they are the biggest, most cute distractions in the entire world, right? Play with the goat. Don't call it yoga.
Withdrawal of the senses. That works.
There you go. Withdrawal of the senses.
As it jumps on your back.
And you're giggling. Yeah, completely. So play with the goats. Yeah, you want to do a downward dog with the goat? Do a downward dog with the goat. Let them climb up on you like you're a mountain. It's perfectly fine. But don't call it yoga. Because yoga is not distraction. Yoga is nonviolence. Yoga is non-stealing. Yoga is truthfulness. Yoga is the economy of our energies so that we can come into the state of consciousness of the self, consciousness of divinity, consciousness of that little goat's divinity. And then there's aparigraha. And some might say that aparigraha is extremely important. It's non-grasping. Non-grasping. When we behave violently, we grasp. We grasp at the guilt. We grasp at the justification. We grasp at the act itself. We grasp at the reasons why. We grasp. We grasp at our right to defend ourselves and our honor, When we steal, that's grasping in and of itself, is it not? When we are telling lies, we're grasping at false beliefs. When we're wasting energy, we're grasping at something, give me meaning, something, give me meaning, something, make me feel better, something, make me happy, something, anything. Doesn't matter what it is, I'm grasping at it. Waste of energy. So non-grasping, aparigraha, is necessary in order to experience the first four on yet a deeper level, a more complete level. When one practices non-grasping, they would see you don't need to call things yoga unless they are. Just go play with the goat. And if you want to go have a wine with your friend, go have wine with your friend. And if you want to have a community, go have a community. Yoga in and of itself is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind in such a way that it opens the mind and the heart to God consciousness. Period. The yoga asana are processes that bring a greater stability, health, and wellness to the body so that there's less suffering in the physical body and in the mind. The mantra is the training of the mind that eventually opens the mind to the inherent wholeness of sacred vibrations. Seva, service, is the action and the practice of offering oneself and one's life more and more completely at the feet of divinity, at the feet of the mother. Every process and technique that comes under the umbrella of yoga, its ultimate purpose is realization of unity, of wholeness and oneness, the remembrance of the self. So these first five, these yamas, they're necessary for that. Otherwise, we walk through life and we feel lost. And we grasp at things to give us some kind of meaning. And those things, they're transient. Everything in this world is transient. Those trees are so beautiful, but 10 years from now, they're probably not going to be there. Some of them are going to die. I don't know, maybe someone who owns the property next door will move them down, and things change. Everything is always changing. And we say we crave stability. And then we hate stability because then we get bored. And we say, I wish things would change. I want some excitement. That's the energetic part of it, right? So the stability, though, when we have the stability in the inner world, it doesn't really matter how much the outer world is changing. We simply see the outer world as being the environment in which we practice. So there are wars, there are natural disasters, there are troubles, there are social inequalities, there are all kinds of things going on in the world. We don't become ignorant of those things. We practice the yamas and the niyamas in order to serve the suffering of other beings profoundly and meaningfully, because the material world is our proving ground in a way. It's our practice. That's our mat, our yoga mat. That's our meditation cushion. That's the place where we say, where does nonviolence fit here? How do I walk through a violent world nonviolently within myself so that I can serve, so that I can remember the true nature of not only my own self, but of all selves, of all beings everywhere. Does that make sense? Questions or reflections so far? Yes?
Just like realizing in this last week like how much I'm grasping. I'm sorry.
There's no apology necessary. Dhyananda, tissues are over here. Would
I
you give
have
them
an
to Julie?
attachment to who I think my daughter is, and who I want her to be, and how I want her to show up in the world. And she's finding her way, and she will find her way. It's hard for me, and I'm trying to be there for her. And yesterday, when she walked in, and I looked at her, and I thought, oh, geez. And I tried to start the conversation with seeking to understand. And I ended up hurting her. I could see it. And that's the last thing I want to do. I want her to feel loved and accepted, because I do love her. But I realized that she had to walk away from me, and I gave her that space. She needed it. But I realized that I went back. I created harm to someone I deeply and profoundly love, and I want her to find her place, and I need to let go of it. And it's funny how grasping just shows up, and when I reflected on it, I realized what I have been doing to myself. I've been doing it to myself. Had myself torn up all day, all week. I keep doing it to myself. It's my problem. I need to work through it, but I inflicted harm in the context of, I think she needs help figuring herself out. Not my job. But it's hard. It's really hard, and it's sneaky how we find ourselves grasping.
Yeah.
It is a pervasive thing, and it is my thoughts, my expectations on someone else. It's not mine.
And so the first thing, and that's wonderful, Tarini, so thank you so much for sharing. It's a wonderful example. It's a genuine example of why we need to understand that this path is a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
It's a little bit at a time. It's an appropriate amount. It's not everything all at once. It's not Mount Everest, you know? It's in a given moment what we can do. The second thing is, did you tell her that?
I did. She came back with a friend, and I took a moment and I hugged her and I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I love you, and I did not mean to hurt you.
But did you accept the responsibility
Yes.
the same way you just said it now?
I did. I
Good.
said, I need to learn to come to it and let you be who you are and just love you no matter how that looks or feels. It's mine. I did.
Good.
And she thanked me, and it was good, but it's hard because I still feel like now, what did I create in there, I think we do it all the time to other people in smaller ways, I just felt like I had license because I'm her mom. I did not have license.
Where'd you learn that from?
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. Where'd you learn that from? Where'd you learn that as her mom you have license? Who taught you that? Mm-hmm. So what we do as parents, and when we look at our child and we say, I want you to be another way, we're mimicking what we were told at that age. Because we were troublesome, we were difficult, we were this, we were that, we weren't measuring up. And we said, every single one of us in this room probably said this, I will never grow up to be like my parent. I would never say that to my child. And yet, how many of you who have children have said that to your child? Please keep that hand down as that child grows up. Right? Don't ever say that to your child. But you will. But you will. You'll say, why are you making the decisions you're making? You're driving me nuts. So there's a couple of things there. The first is that it's an unresolved conflict within ourself that stems from our own childhood. that then stems from our parents' childhood, that stems, go on and go on and go on, through the ancestry. It's an unresolved conflict from childhood. And when we look at our child, what we see and what we're facing is the fear that our parents faced when they looked at us. I don't know who made this statement, who said your children should grow up to be better than you are. That's probably the worst thing that anybody could have ever said, because that right there says, if you don't grow up better than me, and I'm going to define that for you, by the way, then you're a failure. The greatest gift we can give our children is to let them grow up to be who they're going to be, struggles and all, and just be there so that if they fall down, there's a hand to help them up. If they're struggling, there's an ear to listen. We don't make excuses or justifications for poor behavior, but we also learn slowly over time, a little piece at a time, how to differentiate the genuine loving concern that a mother has for her child when she sees the child suffering versus the fear that was instilled in us as a result of our own upbringing and the upbringing of our parents and their parents and so on and so forth. And that's really hard. That's really hard because I think the hardest thing to do is to let go. But for many of us in this room, how many of you had at least some kind of difficulty as a youth? Like, raise hands? Okay. Do you think you're kind of okay today? Yeah. Would people have bet against you in the past? Like, would your parents have said you're never going anywhere, you're never going to be anything, or some teacher or something said that to you? And look at where you are now. You may not be living the life of your absolute dreams, but you're okay. You're okay. And most times, not all times, most times that's the way it turns out is okay. Sometimes it doesn't turn out okay in the human picture of things. But that too will be faced and dealt with if it needs to be. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's so hard, and I appreciate you coming forth and talking about it. I think it's a really powerful example of grasping. Yeah. Any other reflections or questions right now? Did you want to add anything to that, Charini? Do you feel closure to some degree with your?
No, it was helpful. Thank you for your.
Yeah.
I want to be better. I want to be better.
Don't be better.
I want to be better for.
Just be you.
Aware. Yeah.
Just be truthful. Don't steal. Don't be violent. Don't grasp. And keep your heart as much as possible in the place of unity, respect, acknowledgement, understanding that she will never learn from your mistakes. She will never learn from your mistakes. She will learn from hers. Tomas?
Yeah, so while I was listening, what was really clear to me is that this is divinity.
Mm-hmm.
The recognition of, I like how you phrased it, that my past fears, right, can be offered in glad exchange for a present awareness, right? Mm. And that's what you're doing. And that, thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Dayananda?
I've obviously been thinking about being a parent a lot. And it came to me at some point, I think in a conversation with Brahmani, where it's like there's this idea of like, oh, I have to be better than my parents, And at some point I realized like one of the greatest gifts I could give my child is if I can learn how to accept that I've made a mistake and apologize. Mm. And that gives them permission then to do that same thing, to make mistakes in their relationships and then learn that, oh, you can apologize and the world's not going to end.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to lose your status as parent. It's always going to be there. And that was something that was rewarding for me at some point when my parents like apologized. Well, one of them apologized. The other still hasn't figured it out.
But you did.
Yeah, I still love them. It's okay.
That's very true.
Nobody's perfect.
That's also very true. Yeah, that's also very true. Yeah, I know we do think that. We're like, oh, you know, I have to live up to some standard that's beyond the standard that I experienced. But you know what? If you attend a math class that teaches you how to add and subtract, then that's what you're going to learn, is how to add and subtract. And then if somebody puts an algebraic equation in front of you and says, now you have to live up to the algebraic equation, how do you can't. It's not possible because it's not what you've learned. You haven't learned how to exceed your parents. You've only learned how to meet them. Unless you go out into the world and you go to counseling and therapy and parenting support groups and read all of Dr. Oz, not Dr. Oz, who's the guy? Yes, isn't it who was the guy? Not that Dr. Oz. Who was the one who wrote the Parenting Your Child book?
Dr. Spock. Spock,
thank you. See, I knew it was one of those names. Dr. Spock's book, right? So not unless you go about doing all of the work and then you surround yourself with some parents who you know, do have like, you know, a different way of doing things, then you learn how to do the algebraic equation. But if we don't take those steps to learn an alternative to what we were exposed to, we can't surpass that. Yeah.
I had a vision what Dayananda was talking about molding clay. And what he said is about willing to apologize or admit something that was probably unfortunate. And that's like drizzling water on the clay that allows it to be malleable. And we don't need Dr. Spock for that.
That's true. That's very true. That's very true. Is Dr. Spock controversial now, by the way? No, okay, good.
No, I
don't keep up with these things sometimes. Okay. Yeah, but I like that. That's very true. It is, because otherwise the clay dries out.
Right.
And then, you know, it becomes stuck in its condition, similar to what we do. Yeah. Wonderful. Any other questions or reflections? So the yamas today, maybe the niyamas next week. But for now, just remember that there's different levels to this, you know, and the place where we're at, and granted, you know, I've taken my sannyas vows, but I've spent most of my life as a householder, and I still consider myself a householder to some degree, you know. So where we start is we start with small steps. And we inquire, what in my life is violent, and how do I change that? Where does it stem from? What in my life am I stealing that doesn't belong to me? And not only material things, but emotional and energetic things. You know, where am I not being truthful with myself and with others? And how do I rectify that? Where am I wasting my energy? Where am I gossiping, worrying, complaining, running some more? Where am I breaking myself down into fatigue and unnecessarily? And how do I reclaim my ability to sustain myself and my energy? And where am I grasping? And how do I learn how to open the palms of my hands? Because this isn't a prayer. This is a fight. When the hands are clutched around something, it's a fight. When the hands are open, it's a prayer. So how do I pray more? Worry less. Oh. Let's sit nice and tall and close the eyes. Take a nice breath in and a nice breath out. Know that as you breathe in, you are receiving so many gifts. The gifts of realizing your own potential, witnessing the potential of those around you. You're receiving the gift of growth, the gift of blossoming, the gift of experience, fulfillment, challenge, struggle, difficulty, all the gifts. And as you breathe out, you're sharing the best of yourself, integrating deeply as you're able, and sharing the breath of peace, self-responsibility, humility, kindness, light. You also share your struggle, your difficulty, and that's okay. But there is a way to share that is an inspiration and not a burden. And draw the hands together in front of the heart. May we all be inspirations. May we all remain open to the possibility of our own inner light. And may we all be willing to bow down to the feet of the divine and humbly offer ourselves as an instrument of that goodness. And we'll lift our voices in one Om. Take a breath in. Om. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om Shri Matre Namaha. Thank you all so much for being here today. So wonderful to share space with each and every one of you. Thank you. Thank you for all of those who shared. I hope you have the most beautiful day. And even if it's a little stormy, enjoy the storm. Because remember that usually after the storm, things are greener. Flowers are nourished and they start blooming a little more. Storms have a purpose too. They do. If you haven't had brunch, they're serving down in the kitchen. So please show them some love. And hopefully we'll see you next week. Be well. Thank you.